Okay guys, ito na. Live na tayo. Pag-usapan natin itong mga latest na nangyari. Ito na. Naghanap ka ng oras dito. Lahat ng mga kasama natin from iba't ibang kampo ay nandito. No, today I want to talk about something na sa tingin ko is underappreciated, which is yung mga risk, no? Yung mga risk na nangyari ngayon, yung mga developments na nakita natin. So kanina, tsaka dun sa mga ibang videos natin, pinag-usapan natin yung ongoing hearings dyan ukol sa franchise ng SMNI. At pinag-usapan din natin yung implications, no, at saka yung dynamics na papunta na tayo dyan sa disintegration ng unity, no, as we speak. So nag-post tayo ng mga memes, nag-post tayo ng mga iba't ibang ebidensya na as far as the Marcos Duterte unity is concerned, mukhang medyo malabo na yung situation, di ba? And in fact, since kahapon, lumalakas, no, yung mga calls at saka yung mga kritiko na nagsasabi na siguro panahon na mag-resign yung ating vice presidente dahil sa kanyang mga disagreements, no, with the president at saka sa kasalukuyan administration pagdating sa big issues including yung mga peace process negotiations. So now medyo umabot na sa ganitong usapan. Katulad ng sinabi natin kay Ted Filon kanina umaga, yung mga nakinig sa atin dito sa YouTube among others, I'm still skeptical na President Marcos Jr. wants a total disintegration of the unity team. Although sa tingin ko functionally medyo tapos na usapan because very risk averse si President Marcos Jr. And I think President Marcos Jr. will try to patch things up or keep things dun sa, on a kind of a even kill, manage competition or manage conflict, if I can put it that way, no, over the holiday season, so that may give some respite, give some space for the two camps to bring things together. But nevertheless, things are moving very, very fast, especially dito sa situation ng SMNI. Pinakulong, no? Not one, but I think two anchors ng SMNI, especially kasama dyan yung favorite niyong anchor na si Lorraine Badoy. Yan, okay. Medyo na Badoy si Badoy dun ng ibang congressman dyan, diba? Nakita niyo naman mga pinost natin, yung mga back and forth, very heated. Some would even say medyo hostile yung environment doon sa hearings about SMNI, which kind of confirms, no, yung isang conversation natin a few days ago nung first hearings of SMNI at kasama natin si Mark Gamboa, no, doon sa RRM natin. I think he correctly mentioned, this is last Friday, he correctly mentioned na di ba, delegado ng SMNI as things go. Now, having said that, mga kameta, sa aking palagay, medyo nakakabahala pa rin yung situation. Alam ko yung mga iba dyan natutuwa, naglalabas na ng mga popcorn, di ba, kung ano. Hinahanap ko. Ito. Yung iba naglalabas na ng popcorn, excited na, alam mo naman, Germans have a term for it, no? They call it Schadenfreude, no? They call it Schadenfreude, meaning taking joy in the misery of others, no? But for me, medyo short-sighted 'yan. So kung ikaw ay how should I put it? If you care about rule of law, no? At kung gusto mo maging tunay na demokrasya ang Pilipinas sa isang, balang isang araw, uh, you're still gonna be worried about what's happening right now. Now, katulad ng sinabi natin sa isang tweet natin kanina, the ABS-CBN and the SMNI cases, and increasingly a franchise case in both of them. So on the surface, the ABS-CBN and SMNI cases look very similar. Franchise, in the case of ABS-CBN, di sila binigyan ng bagong franchise. And in the case of SMNI, baka ma-revoke yung kanilang franchise. So, in a certain technical sense, they're two similar cases. But, pag ina-analyze mo, there's some big differences there. To begin with, as far as ABS-CBN is concerned, di ba, it's a blue chip established mainstream media outlet and the leading media outlet for quite a while sa Pilipinas. It's an internationally recognized media outlet. Marami siyang napanalo na awards, and the anchors that have worked there, the analysts that have worked there, yours truly, a lot of them are recognized as world-class journalists and analysts, among others. So, no offense, but I'm not sure SMNI is in that category. Kumpara sa ABS-CBN, SMNI ay right? Just to be very honest about it, if you just look at the, ilang bang napanalo nila ng mga global awards or nominations sa global awards at ano yung background ng mga kinukuha nilang anchors in terms of high-level, world-class journalism. No? And others would be even harsher, and they will say that pagdating naman sa SMNI, it's not only about credentials, because credentials, it's one thing to talk about credentials, but it's another thing to talk about convictions, ideological leaning, uh, political bias, and not to mention intentions and quality of service. No, some would say that ABS-CBN and SMNI cannot even be put in the same category. Right, they're totally incomparable. Even though technically speaking, more or less, yung issue ngayon is franchise. Franchise in the case of ABS-CBN na hindi binigay sa kanila, and franchise in the case of SMNI na meron sila pero pwede matanggal. Now, interestingly, having said that, the two are related very much to each other on two levels. Una-una, pag tinignan nyo, it's hard to imagine the rise of SMNI over the past 2 or 3 years without appreciating the decline of ABS-CBN. In fact, in many ways, the removal of ABS-CBN from the air. Right? Andun sila online, sure, given na yan. And medyo swerte ang ABS-CBN because they were the most forward-looking major media outlets, so they were prepared for going fully online for quite some time. But nevertheless, yung pagtanggal ng ABS-CBN dun sa airwaves really helped to boost alternatives, particularly itong, alo, pupunta na. Right. So the rise of SMNI and the decline of ABS, at least in terms of main airwaves, the two cannot be separated. But they're also related in a much more problematic way. And this is where I'm not saying na I'm siding with SMNI, but the thing is, yung nangyayari ngayon sa SMNI cannot be separated from yung nangyayari sa ABS-CBN. Alright? Because what was done to the ABS-CBN, I'm not saying ABS-CBN was perfect, we can debate about it, whether may mga issues talaga about, their corporate structures, about, all of the issues that were raised about ABS. Ewan ko yung sa mga, yung mga rants ni Tatay Digong, mahina yung mga ganyan sa akin. Pero, I've worked in different media channels and I've heard from different sides, no? We can have a debate about that. But, the thing is, yung ABS-CBN, natanggal sila ng franchise at the height of the pandemic when the environment was heavily securitized. Ito yung panahon na may lockdowns, ito yung mga panahon na pwede ka ma-cyber libel kung na-criticize mo yung government, ito yung panahon na natatakot ang tao on so many levels, ito yung mga panahon na hindi makalabas at hindi makaprotest ng tao, ito yung panahon na people are feeling very vulnerable, people are worried about their jobs, about their safeties, and most importantly, ito yung panahon na may emergency powers ang gobyerno at yung presidente, no? So it was really under those extreme circumstances that ABS-CBN lost its franchise. But that's one thing, the circumstances. It's also how ABS-CBN lost the franchise, right? So it's not only what is the circumstances, it's also how. So kung titignan niyo mga kameta, you had the top leaders of ABS-CBN. People have been in this business for a very long time, including the Lopezes, including yung CEO, all of them were there. And look at yung treatment na nakuha nila sa Kongreso ng time niyan. Look at the nature of questions. Look at yung how professionally some people are conducting themselves. And then you also had cases whereby some people were talking about their own case. That year may report kayo sa akin na hindi ko nagustuhan. So like some people are wondering whether this is a vendetta situation, right? And look at the humiliation that top media corporate officials were subjected to. Now, again, we can have a long debate about monopolistic practices, about oligarchic. Sure, we can have a lot of discussion about that. But let's not forget that it's almost impossible to imagine yung nangyari sa ABS-CBN if A, hindi yung kasagsagan ng pandemic and my emergency situation and heavily securitized environment, and B, hindi feeling empowered yung mga ibang legislators to interrogate essentially and to cross-examine, and some would even say way more than that when it comes to sa interaction nila sa mga ABS-CBN leadership. Just watch it yourself, mga kameta, so that you can decide on your own, right? So in my opinion, I mean, this is not just an opinion, this is a proper analysis of the situation. something changed forever in the Philippines after that. Because for a very, very long time, ang media po sa Pilipinas ay almost sacrosanct. Right? The media was very sacrosanct. And if you look at the Duterte administration, President Duterte in particular, he attacked many things that were assumed as too sacred to even question or criticize. To begin with, of course, literally on sacred institutions like the Catholic hierarchy, right? But the media was always also seen as a semi-sacred pillar of Philippine democracy. You know, third estate, fourth estate, whatever. Um, and having a free media was always essential to having a healthy democracy. And in fact, it was always our strong media that gave this impression that the Philippines is the freest country in Asia, right? Or at least in Southeast Asia. Tama na natin mga katabi. Okay. Okay. Ay, sorry. Sige po, sige po. Ayun, may mga kasama na tayo. Okay, so, tabi lang tayo mga bata. No, so, for me, for a very long time, parang almost untouchable, no? Almost untouchable, etong media natin, right? Very powerful yung media. I mean, you could see it. Journalists, I mean, becoming vice president, journalists becoming senators until today, journalists, interrogating and back and forth going against powerful presidents and officials. Look at the showdown between Manila Times and Erap Estrada. Look at how Philippine Daily Inquirer went after Estrada, went after Binay, went after Marcos, of course, Marcos Sr., that really established Philippine Daily Inquirer as we know it today. So for a very long time, the media was seen as a sacrosanct institution, as a pillar of our democracy. What happened to ABS-CBN changed that forever. Changed that forever. So now what you're seeing right now is with the SMNI, of course, sasabihin ng iba dyan is, well, sinabi ni Ronald Llamas nung kausap natin siya, sabi niya, it's poetic justice. So I understand why yung iba natutuwa, pumapalakpak, wow, poetic justice, wow, buti nga sa kanila, yung ganyan mindset. But for me, this is still, medyo alanganin ako dito because you now have a situation whereby yung so-called Sotto law, no, let's discuss that quite shortly, well, more than shortly, parang yung legal protections sa media are coming under assault or question. Now, we can have a legal debate about this, but we can have further legal debate about this. But let me be very clear. Ano to? Itong Sotto law na to. Hindi ito si Tito Sotto na ngayon, pero yung dating Sotto. So, more than 70 years ago, mga kameta, no? Almost 75 years ago, Republic Act number 53 protected journalists from being forced na pangalanan to name yung kanilang mga confidential sources. Kasi yun nga one of the ways journalists, especially investigative journalists, mga kameta, can do their job is if there's a certain degree of confidentiality. In the same way that, I don't know, if you get a lawyer, you have a therapist, whatever, you need a certain degree of confidentiality for that thing to work. Because maraming tao matatakot, no, to openly come out and spill the beans. So the Sotto law is one of the very foundational laws which has allowed for the Philippines to have one of the most vibrant, not perfect, very imperfect, but one of the most vibrant and freest media anywhere in Asia, at the very least, no? Basahin natin ito. So actually, ang author nito, kaya nga Sotto, is Senator Vicente Sotto. Ito yung first, hindi yung Tito Sotto, alright? Hindi ito yung mga Itbulaga people. Pwede natin pag-usapan ng Itbulaga separately one day. Pero ito ito yung the first, no? This was the special guy. This is the grand guy. And if you remember, mga kameta, nung sa interview natin with Dr. Claudio, a few months ago, he was talking about how Vico Sotto is reportedly going back to the works of his great-grandfather or grandfather. Etong si first Vicente Sotto na yan as a source of inspiration for statesmanship. So, actually, Senator Vicente Sotto, ito yung pinaka-original, no? Ito yung OG. Ito yung pinaka-original. He is a legendary statesman that really deserves a lot of respect. And one of his greatest contributions to Philippine democracy was itong tinatawag na Sotto Law Republic Act number 53. Let me just read, mga kameta, itong section 1 ng batas na yan, which was enacted in 1946. So essentially at the inception of the Philippine Republic. Democratic Republic. Let's be very clear about that. So, basahin natin makinig kayo. I'll of course post this also sa baba para ma-appreciate nyo ito. The publisher, editor, or duly accredited reporter of any newspaper, magazine, or periodical of general circulation cannot be compelled to reveal, hindi pwede pilitan ang isang reporter ng isang dyaryo or any duly accredited reporter ng dyaryo, magazine, or periodical ng isang general circulation cannot be compelled to reveal the source of any news report or information appearing in said publication which was related in confidence to such publisher, editor, or reporter unless, of course there's a caveat there, the court or a house or a committee of Congress finds that such revelation is demanded by the interest of the state. Alright? The interest of the state. Now obviously, key dito yung issue ng interest ng state. Yung interest ng bayan, no? Or in this case, Estado, to be literal about this. Now, not long after, yung definition of the phrase the interest of the state was tested when isang newspaper reporter ay si Angel Parazo ay nagsulat na isang news story on the alleged leakage in some subjects sa bar examination that year. So, matagal pa yan, no? So, the reporter argued that the interest of the state used in law should be rated to mean security of the state or public safety. Alright? But in ruling in December 1948, ito, ruling ng Supreme Court of the Philippines yan, ito yung pinakamataas na korte ng bansa, maintaining that the integrity of the examiners qualified as interest of the state, ordered Parazo to disclose the source or sources of information for the news item. Of course, nag-refuse siya and he was jailed for 30 days for contempt. Nevertheless, in June 1956, RA 1477 was passed, amending itong Section 1 ng batas na yan. So the controversial phrase, interest of the state, pinalitan ito sa security of the state. Because the term interest is a little bit too vague, too generic, and pwede mo i-stretch yan. In fact, I think the proper term is pwede i-weaponize yan. Right? Or to make it more academic, technical, pwede yan i-securitize. No? Was changed to the security of the state. The phrase without prejudice to his liability under the civil and criminal laws was also added to the beginning of the section. So, nagkaroon na amendments na it shouldn't be prejudicial to the liability under civil and criminal. So, ito yung konteksto mga kameta na pinag-usapan natin. Wait lang, check ko lang, baka late na ako sa natin. So please check this on your own. Ipopost ko yung mamaya para basahin nyo na mabuti mga kameta kasi mahalaga yan. Because what's happening right now is may mga nandyan sa Kongreso na sinasabi itong mga SMNI anchors na kinulong over the past 24 hours or so. Hindi sila journalist kasi hindi sila duly accredited base doon sa conception natin ng accreditation. You know, like what makes you a newspaper, what makes you which raises a bigger question because medyo mahabang usapan yan. I don't know how to go into this. But my point is, being a journalist, sa akin palagay, I mean, we can have a debate about this. The moment you work already, for a major media outlet, you're a de facto journalist. And let's not forget that there are big questions about ano ba talaga yung the organization for accreditation of journalism. Sa akin palagay, the moment you work for something like the Philippine Daily Inquirer, like yours truly, which is the leading newspaper in the country, the newspaper of record, the moment you work for ABS-CBN or GMA, whatever, yung mga big media networks na yan, whether kasama ka sa isang organization or not, sa akin palagay, you already qualify as a journalist. So I consider myself as a journalist, not because, I mean, of course, I'm not a reporter or, I'm not been part of any organization, but I do journalism, right? Nagsusulat po tayo dun sa pinakamalaking diary or at least the newspaper record of the country, and I've been working in the biggest television and media networks of the country over the past 6 years, from ABS to GMA and now the other one, TV5. So, for me, that makes you a journalist, per se. So, the idea that kung hindi ka lang kasama sa organization X, Y, and Z, even though nag-work ka sa isang major mainstream media, then hindi ka journalist and therefore wala kang protection sa ilalim ng saligang batas, or pwede ma-question yung pagiging journalist mo, medyo, this could actually set a very dangerous precedence, di ba? Um, Kasi 'di ba, for you to work in a major media outlet, whether as a columnist, analyst, etc., hindi ka required to get accreditation from one body. In fact, last time I checked, there are like multiple or journalism, reporters body also in the Philippines, and sobrang all over the place yung journalism community, right? It's very fragmented. There's no longer single center of gravity like before, and the media landscape has completely changed over the past 10, 20 years or so pa lang. So what I'm saying here is we have to be very careful about, kasi alam ko yung iba dyan, excited lang sila kasi galit sila, pikon sila, naiinis sila, or, they have an axe to grind. Yung iba naglalabas ng popcorn, etc. But for me, I understand the short-term joy some people are getting or schadenfreude, but always keep in mind that we may set another dangerous precedence here, di ba? Kaya kung maalala niyo mga kameto, nung nakausap natin si Justice Carpio few weeks, the other month, pinag-usapan namin yung issue ng mga pro-China propagandists, di ba? At sabi ko, yung iba parang binababoy nila yung ating demokrasya para suportahan yung posisyon ng kalaban natin sa West Philippine Sea. Hindi ba kailangan na magkakaroon tayo ng mga batas kung saan pipilitin yung mga iba dyan na maging tapat? Kung talagang sila, bayaran sila, i-declare nila na foreign agent sila, then they can legally continue what they're doing. Pero at least transparent yung situation. Pero naalala niyo sinabi ni Justice Carpio na that's a dangerous, kumbaga, precedence. Kasi ngayon, wala tayong problema dyan. Pero paano ko sa future, may mananalo na naman ng pro-China president, pwedeng gamitin yan. Sabi niya, ikaw pro-US ka or Japan ka, tapos pwede gamitin sa'yo. So yung precedence is very important, mga kameta. For me, an important glass ceiling was already shattered nung ginawa nila sa ABS-CBN. At para sa akin, if hindi nangyari yon, I don't think mangyayari ngayon yung nangyayari sa SMNI. Now, pwedeng sabihin ng mga iba, poetic justice yan, in a way, di ba? Connect the dots, alam niyo na. But for me, that's a kind of short-sighted, almost puerile schadenfreude, right? Because yun nga in the future, okay, malay natin, sabihin natin ganito, I'll push it to its logical conclusion. Sabihin natin, in the next 6 months, matanggal talaga ng mga SMNI, Duterte, lahat na yan sa eksena. And then, anong mangyari? What happens the next day? Sa tingin niya, happy na everything? Hindi. Not necessarily, right? So, kaya nga, what I'm saying is at the very least, watch very carefully what's happening right now because we might end up setting another precedence which can later on come to haunt people, right? Nevertheless, I don't want to be prejudicial dun sa content ng diskusyon dun sa loob ng Kongreso ngayon. I'm still willing to listen. I'm still looking at the arguments of different congressmen. Some of them saying that hindi applicable ang Sotto law dito. But nevertheless, we have to watch very carefully kung hindi para siguraduhin na hindi na ma-weaponize, no? Ang certain interpretation of Sotto law or ma-weaponize yung invocation of exemption from the Sotto law. This is very, very important, mga kamenta. And I'm not saying this because I'm a person who happens to work in a major media outlet, or two rather, but I'm saying as someone who's actually looking at the rule of law, and rule of law means predictable and uniform applicability of law across time and space. Alright, let's be very clear about it. Rule of law doesn't mean na kung anong sinabi ng isang gobyerno pagdating sa interpretation nila sa batas. That's not rule of law, that's rule by law. The preposition is very important there. A rule of law situation is across time and space and different administration. There's a uniformity and predictability in application of law. And more or less, you don't do mumbo-jumbo interpretation based on who's holding the throne, right? So, that's why mga kameta, alam ko yung iba sa inyo, poetic justice yung theme nyo, natatawa kayo, naglalabas kayo ng popcorn. But be very, very careful because remember, not long ago, nagpa-popcorn yung iba dyan nung tinatanggal yung franchise ng ABS-CBN. Nasaan sila ngayon? Now, sinasabi ng iba is bilog ang mundo. Yes, but at the same time, minsan precedence is also important na bilog ang mundo, maybe for, you could argue that yes, bilog ang mundo dun sa mga nag-abuso, pero minsan bilog din ang mundo para para dun sa mga hindi masamang tao. Tignan mo yung nangyari kay Leila de Lima. Tignan mo yung nangyari sa maraming kaibigan natin sa journalism, right? Walang perfecto, but these are good people, right? And what was done to them was unjust. Okay, it's very, very important, mga kameta, to look at what's happening right now and making sure na hindi magkakaroon ng isa pang problematic precedents, because even if, sabihin natin, things go down to their logical conclusion at matanggal ng mga Dutertes, mawala talaga ng unity at matanggal ng SMNI, the question is what's going to happen the day after or the year after? Or what about isa pang presidente mananalo in 2028 na sobrang authoritarian ulit or populist at pwedeng gamitin itong mga nangyayari ngayon para i-silence ang media. Even worse than that, baka nga maraming mga journalists or media men dyan ay magdadalawang isip na forever. Magsa-self-censor na sila. Mag-worry na sila because nakikita nila, oh, itong ginawa sa ABS-CBN, itong ginawa sa SMNI, baka naman, di ba, mag-ingatan tayo. So, that inherently undermines the fundamentals of our democracy, right? So, let's watch. Yes, I know, excited yung iba, nagpa-popcorn na yung iba, schadenfreude yung iba, but do not forget, mga kameta, we cannot have a real democracy until we have real rule of law. And that's why it's very important. You don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to be a constitutional law expert, you don't have to be a legislator, you don't have to be an official for you to care about how law is applied in this country and what interpretation of law is applied across time and space and administrations. Otherwise, banana republic tayo. I'm not saying that's our case, but I'm saying we have to make sure we don't become a banana republic, but instead we become a nation of rule of law. On that note, thank you very much, mga kametay. Kailangan ko na tumakbo. I really appreciate this discussion. Salamat sa lahat ng mga nagko-comment dyan, sumusuporta dyan. This is, medyo pagod na tayo. Ang dami natin ginagawa. Pang ilan na natin yan. Live natin today pa lang. Yeah, these are intense moments, mga kameta. No? So, alam niyo naman na may kantsawan ako, natatawa ako, etc. Nagpapatawa tayo. But but I'm a very serious guy. I'm also looking at the day after, diba? That's what leadership is all about. That's what critical thinking is about. You're not only looking at what happiness you're getting now or what sadness you're getting now, you're looking at the long-term horizon. Because that's the best way we can care about our democracy in our country. So best wishes sa ating mga congressmen as they try to examine what's happening here, because if indeed there has been a clear abuse of journalistic prerogative and clear abuse of yung franchise na binigay sa isang media outlet, then indeed there should be a basis for examining that franchise. So I'm not against re-examining the franchise, but we have to make sure that this is in accordance to rule of law. Yun po yung sinasabi natin. So whether you feel good or bad about it, that should be secondary. It's the rule of law which is the most important one. On that note, thank you very much, mga kameta. Yan, natutuwa yung mga ka-DDS natin na mga lalaki yung mga followers natin ng DDS sigla. Joke lang. On that note, thank you very much, mga kameta. Talk to you soon, and God bless. And God bless the Philippines. Yes, nahihirapan ang bansa natin, but we have to do our best to make sure democracy will survive and hopefully thrive down the road with or without unity. But most likely, mukhang wala na unity.